right, we welcome each of you to come to the Natural Resource Meeting. I apologize for having to have it later in the day, and that was to accommodate me. I've been out with some surgery, and I appreciate each and every member that stayed after when I know you had stuff to do, and kind of shows you what a wonderful group of people that we truly serve with. So thanks to all my colleagues. If we could at this time, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Carpenter, Senator Mills, Senator Schickel, Senator Southworth, Senator Webb, Senator Westerfield, Senator Wheeler, Senator Williams, Senator Turner, and Chair Smith.
Present.
Have a quorum.
Have a due quorum. Okay, at this time, if you could, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask everyone to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, let's get into this. I think we are going to go, where is my, let's do SJR first. So if you want to go ahead and come to the table.
SJR 79.
Yeah, I see Senator Carroll. Senator Carroll, do you have anybody coming with you, or are you just going to present this yourself? All right, I'll turn it over to you, and just as you all know, have everyone identify themselves for the records, even though we know you and Tom quite well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to present this joint resolution today. You all are well aware that a few years ago we lifted the nuclear moratorium in the Commonwealth, and since then not a lot was said or done in the area of nuclear energy within our state. Over recent years, we have seen the interest in nuclear energy explode, not just throughout this country, but throughout the world. And a lot of new technologies are out there. In Wyoming, Bill Gates' company TerraPower is building a sodium reactor. TVA is working on a small modular reactor. Right now, there are at least eight states in line hoping to attract a commercial reactor. Virginia has made a pledge that they're going to be the first in the country to have the first commercial small modular reactor. Tennessee announced, I think last week or the week before, a $50 million investment. Over recent months, we have communicated with Virginia on a couple of occasions to get some advice from them on how we should proceed. And Virginia, their governor is committed. They have passed bills. Their desire is to be the leader in nuclear energy. As we started looking at where we wanted to be in the future and how we needed to get there, what steps we needed to take, we first thought that we wanted to do legislation to establish a nuclear commission within the Commonwealth. After talking with Virginia, looking at a model in Idaho, New Hampshire, we really decided that we kind of needed to take a step back. And those states are further ahead than we are in this process, especially Virginia, due to the fact they manufacture nuclear subs. They have reactors there. We all know Tennessee has reactors there. And so we decided to form a working group to get us where we needed to go, to study the issues on the technology that would be acceptable for our Commonwealth, and not just looking at the idea of bringing nuclear energy to the Commonwealth, but also focusing on nuclear industry. In my part of the state, you all are very well aware that at the DOE site in Paducah, there are thousands of containers there left over from the process of enrichment that the plant used to conduct there. Those processes have been shut down. And you've heard me say this before. Bill Gates, the owner of TerraPower, says that there is enough fuel there to fuel this country for several hundred years with the newer technologies that are coming out. Global Laser Enrichment is a company that's looking at coming into Paducah. Their goal, their processes would enrich the substances that are remaining there on site to be usable fuel. So that's something as far as nuclear industry that we are looking at in our area. So, Mr. Chairman, members, basically this resolution establishes the process with the working group. It sets the membership, which has government officials, energy officials, and experts in nuclear energy. And we'll probably have a floor amendment that will add a couple groups, one of those being the Nuclear Energy Institute, and then a couple folks from the co-ops who would be more specialized in this area. And this group will work through the summer. This will be established under the executive branch. Kenya Stump, who is over the Office of Energy Policy, will chair this committee, and we hope to come up with a plan. So next session, we will have legislation that will establish a nuclear commission in the Commonwealth, and this group will be responsible for planning the future, educating the state, be a clearinghouse for all the data, the research that we need, and just further the efforts when I'm gone, when all of you are gone from this body. There will be an entity that will continue to push nuclear in the Commonwealth. You all know the technologies. You know it's the way of the future. With all the new technologies, it's much safer than it has been in the past. And it is a reliable source of base load energy. If we do not move on this soon, and if we don't aggressively move on this, folks, we're going to fall behind and we're going to pay the price for this in the future. As I've said repeatedly, everybody wants coal to be a base load source of energy in our Commonwealth for as long as we can. But the reality of it is it's declining, and we need to be prepared for the next generation so we are not left behind and being able to provide efficient energy but good baseload energy at a fair, reasonable price and be able to do it safely. So we need to get started on that endeavor now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Carroll, I appreciate your comments and your work on this. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion on the bill? I have a second. Have a second. Ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Senator Carpenter. Aye. Senator Mills. Aye. Senator Schickel. Aye. Senator Southworth. Aye. Senator Turner. Senator Webb. Senator Westerfield. Aye. Senator Wheeler. Aye. Senator Williams. Aye. Chair Smith.
I vote aye.
Passes.
Congratulations, your motion passed, and we appreciate your work on this. Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, one other thing I'd like to add, and there will be more information coming out on this. May 17th through May 19th in Paducah, there will be a nuclear development forum. Topics will be transitioning coal to nuclear, which there are many coal plants in Kentucky that have been determined to be suitable for transition to nuclear power plants. Understanding the resources available, workforce training and retraining, incorporating reuse of existing facilities for nuclear projects, industrialization and opportunities. So covering a wide gamut of nuclear issues. My hope is that many of you will be able to attend that forum. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. And I just want to make one thing. I don't necessarily agree with the concept of petitioning, because I've seen a lot of applications where coal and nuclear work in tandem. And we've seen this applied. So I think that the future of it is not one against the other. I mean, obviously, I'm from the coal fields, and I've always been very proud of that. But I see technology that has been able to merge both of these. And now with the being able to recharge the rods has kind of really reawakened nuclear to people that have not warmed up to it. And I think I communicated with you this summer when I was with Lindsey Graham, who was really pushing that if your state doesn't have this in its mix, then you're not going to get caught up. And I think I may have even sent you a couple of those articles that he had. So I don't see him in competition, and I may be wrong, but I feel like very much that a lot of us coal guys understand that there could be an application for us in the future that helps people get the most affordable and reliable rates and energy in the state, which I think is our goal. But thank you very, very much for your work on this.
And remember, again, we're not just pushing nuclear energy, but industry also. And I think that's crucial to think about as we move forward.
Thank you. All right, let's keep moving. At this time, I'm going to ask Senator Mills to come down to the table. We have a couple of people that have signed up to speak as well. Senator Mills, do you have any guests that you want to have come to the table with you? I do not. Okay, very good. Then we will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robbie Mills, Senator from the 4th Senate District in Northwest Kentucky. Appreciate you hearing Senate Bill 4. Senate Bill 4 is all about protecting our national power grid and acting now to stop the electrical reliability crisis that is approaching faster than most people want to admit. Coal-powered electric generation plants have been the foundation of our electric grid and will need to be that for the foreseeable future because coal is reliable, resilient, affordable, and provides energy security for our state and our nation. We all know and understand the nation's power grid is changing, but this change must take place gradually to avoid jeopardizing the reliability of our grid. In the last 14 years, almost 300 coal-powered electric generation plants have closed. This 40% reduction is bad news for all of us.
Senator Mills,
Yes.
could I ask you, do you want to go ahead and adopt your sub?
Yes,
so you're
yes, we
speaking
do
to
have
the
a sub. I apologize.
That's okay. I
Yeah,
just
if
want to help you so
could,
we didn't have to do
sure.
it later. So
If we could
motion for
adopt the sub, that'd be great.
All those in favor of the sign of aye? Oh, wait, I made a motion, if that's okay. Motion and second. We'll get you taken care of here. All those in favor of the sign of aye? Opposed, likewise, the motion carries. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 300 power plants have closed in the last 14 years. That's a 40% reduction. And that's really terrible news for us, but it's really drastic news when you consider what's going to happen over the next 2 years. We're going to lose 27 megawatts of coal generation in 24 states. And I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's over the next 5 years. But in the next 2 years, in Kentucky, I'm sorry, I've got that backwards. In the next 5 years, we're going to lose 27 megawatts in 24 states. In the next 5 years, in Kentucky, we're going to lose 2,000 megawatts. The point I'm making here is that we've had tons of coal plants shut down. The likelihood of more shutdowns coming is very high, very, very high, unless we do something. The Federal Energy Regulation Commission has begun to ring the bell and to issue clear warnings against further coal capacity retirements. Their warnings point directly to the nation's utilities switching too rapidly from baseload power plants to intermittent renewables. In other words, we are shutting down too many reliable coal-burning plants too fast and replacing them with power sources that fail to meet the many advantages that the former baseload source offered. Senate Bill 4 is designed to ring the bell in Kentucky and hopefully in the nation, and to serve as our initial action to address the coming reliability crisis in electric generation. Senate Bill 4 gives the Public Service Commission the authority to approve or deny the retirement of an electric generation unit owned by a utility. It requires the PSC to confirm certain facts prior to the approval of a coal plant retirement, prior to any surcharges on consumers for decommissioning, and prior to any cost recovery requests. Those facts that they're looking at and need to confirm are this: that reliability and resilience of the electric grid serving Kentucky customers will not be compromised by these changes, that independent system operators or regional transmission organizations' operations will not be negatively affected, that reliability of service to Kentucky utility customers will not be adversely impacted, and that it will not result in any short-term capacity additions that will increase customers' electric rates. Senate Bill 4 places specific annual reporting requirements on the PSC to the LRC related to the number of retirement requests and approved during that year. and any stranded costs that might have been associated with those changes. Finally, Senate Bill 4 does not prevent the PSC from approving the retirement of a coal-fired plant or associated associated recovery costs. It simply ensures that our grid reliability is being considered in the decision-making process by a fair, neutral commission. I believe Senate Bill 4 will help bring a balance to future retirement decisions and properly weigh reliability and economics in the decision-making process. These retirement decisions are important, long-term decisions whose effects will be felt by many in Kentucky for many years to come. Senate Bill 4 will help protect our fragile electric power grid and will help Kentucky continue to be the leaders in electric liability for years to come. Mr. Chairman, just wanted to make another fact that I just found out today, just doing some research. In 2021, Kentucky's industrial electrical rates ranked 4th lowest in the nation. In 2022, they rate 21st. Those are some staggering numbers. Now, what's been going on in those 2 years? We've had power supply debates, and we've closed down power plants. We've switched power sources. Those are important things to look at. And I know this is a broad-ranging issue, but we need to discuss the reliability issue, and that's what Senate Bill 4 is all about, is making sure that our state doesn't end up with issues that happened over Christmas consistently. We've always bragged in Kentucky that we have ample supply of power, inexpensive power. That's why big industrial complexes have located in Kentucky. I'm not too sure with those statistics that we can continue to say that, and it concerns me, and that's why I've brought Senate Bill 4. We have listened to utilities and all those involved. We've taken input, and I'm sure there's some behind me that don't like what we've chosen to include in the bill. But we've got to come to a conclusion in Kentucky how we can continue to be competitive, and grandma and grandpa can know that their medical device has power and that they're going to have consistent power and they're going to stay warm and not have to take their whole retirement check for that. So, Mr. Chairman, I think I'll leave my comments at that and see if there's any questions from the committee.
Okay, Senator Mills, thank you for your presentation on your bill. We have no questions, but we have a couple people signed up to speak.
Sure.
I think Kent Blake, if you want to come up to the table, and Rocco, and I'm going to do a terrible job, Rocco, with your name. Why don't you say it and save me the embarrassment of messing up such a beautiful name?
Thank you. My last name is Diacenzo.
Diacenzo?
It's
Yeah, I knew it was too
easier
pretty
than it
to have my voice say it. So yeah, you guys turn your mics on down there, and just again identify yourselves for our records, okay?
Thank you, Senator Smith. My name is Kent Blake. I'm a vice president with Elchini and KU.
Good afternoon. My name is Rocco Diacenzo. I am Deputy General Counsel for Duke Energy Kentucky.
Very good, gentlemen. We'll turn it over for your comments.
Thank you, and I want to thank everyone for your time today and for allowing me the opportunity to comment on Senate Bill 4, particularly at this late hour, and Chairman Smith, with the effort you took to actually get here. We really appreciate that. We also really sincerely appreciate the intent behind the bill. Providing safe, reliable service is at the core of what we do. It is what we do as a company. And so we truly appreciate the intent of the bill. However, we do have some concerns about unintended consequences of the bill, specifically that it could lead to higher energy rates for our customers, and two, could actually have an adverse impact on reliability potentially. First, there's no reference in the bill to affordability or the longstanding principle within Kentucky utility regulation of least cost planning. Under least cost planning, a utility considers multiple combinations of energy supply to meet customer demand reliably. And among those reliable alternatives, they then choose the portfolio that represents the least cost to their customers. And if the Public Service Commission agrees, they approve any changes that we want to make, additions largely. I realize that this bill explicitly gives them the ability to approve retirements, and that is a little different, but not something we're taking issue with. In contrast to least cost planning, Senate Bill 4 presumes that existing fossil fuel generation in the Commonwealth should remain in place regardless of its age, condition, more cost-efficient alternatives, or the ability of a utility to even run those facilities necessarily and still comply with laws and regulations. The likely result is higher rates that put economic development in the state at risk. I agree with many of the things Mr. Mills said about our generation in the state and coal-fired generation specifically. We all know that low cost-based rates is a major reason that Kentucky is the home to large energy-intensive manufacturing operations and is continuing to attract investment. We are also, though, unsure what Senate Bill 4 actually does to enhance reliability in the state. The Kentucky Public Service Commission under KRS 278 already has broad powers of authority to address both rates and service of utilities, from examinations to audits to investigations of any practice or act affecting or related to service. In addition, the presumption that existing fossil fuel generation should not be retired could lead to older, less efficient infrastructure remaining in place to serve customers. At some point, that infrastructure is no longer cost-effective for customers or as reliable, and it's basically time to trade it in for a newer model. That's not a decision that we take lightly at LG&E and KU. LG&E and KU are among the best operators in the country of coal-fired generation, both from a reliability standpoint as well as a cost standpoint. So it's a competitive advantage for our utility. And with constructive cost recovery mechanism in the state, like the environmental cost recovery mechanism, you could argue that we have every incentive in the world to keep coal-fired generation open as long as it's reasonably possible. So when we actually bring forward the few times that we have to date, we've got a current case that deals with 2027 and 2028 and 3 units specifically. But when we bring a case forward that says now is the time to retire a given coal-fired unit, you can believe that now is the time. That's what our very extensive analysis would show. Some people will take objection to that. That's why we have long, extensive proceedings before we can put those replacements in service. We were very glad to see that the Senator Mills' Senate Bill 4 referenced fossil fuel generation, because it's been that combination of coal-fired and gas-fired generation that has basically kept the lights on and kept the energy flowing in the hottest days of summer and the coldest nights of winter. In fact, while all generation technologies have their unique advantages and risks, fossil fuel generation currently represents the least cost way to provide customers with dispatchable energy around the clock. Having said that, legislation needs to leave open the possibility that technologies could evolve and costs could trend in a way that favors alternatives at some point in the future. So in summary, and I'm trying to be brief here, in summary, we understand the committee has some concerns about the pace and nature of what some refer to as an energy transition in this country. It's been a little less, I would say, less rapid in this state, and I do agree that that has served this state well. And concerns with what that means to affordability and reliability. There are a number of bills that have been introduced during this short session related to reliability and/or affordability. Rather than passing some or all of them, we would ask you to consider instead convening a broad stakeholder group that deals with these matters regularly in an attempt to determine how we might best address both reliability and affordability for the long term. Those are my comments. I can either take questions or I can let Mr. D'Ascenzo make comments
Well,
first.
I just have one comment.
Sure.
You were talking about all things as they are, that you all would continue to use coal as long as it was sort of affordable. But,
Right.
you know, there's, the federal government is set at the table with a lot of incentives. They've got a lot of, let's call it aid available for you if you'll burn anything else other than coal. I mean, they're laying it on the table, and you guys are taking a seat at that table, and you're foolish not to. We understand the business model that they're going to collect these fees, and they're going to punish the people that are still using fossil fuels, because that's where their federal model goes. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter who the end user is, whether that's a family outside of Atlanta, Georgia, as we know is heavily impacted, or a family in eastern Kentucky who just went almost 2 weeks without power there. That's really not coming into consideration. So as a large company like yours, you can't afford to not sit at that table and partake in this new aid they've got, not use coal. So it's not the same, and it does become expensive. It's a decision in those boardrooms that you have to decide about how many tons of coal you're going to use compared to what this aid package may be. And at the end of it's going to come at a number where you're obviously going to be punished, and somebody's fingers on the scale. So it makes it difficult for us. Now, we want you to make money. But what we just saw in this last disaster was we saw people suffering and even losing their life because the system failed. That was a pretty significant dip for us to ignore. So I think it's prudent that we paused and taken into consideration the health impact of what happens when we don't have power at the end of those lines for those homes. And as we follow it back up to the chain, we kind of all arrived at the same conclusion. There was something was happening there. So I do want us to move forward, but put everything on the table, that there's obviously an incentive and there's a welcoming aid for you and your companies and utilities that want to participate in more of a climate-oriented, buffet that they have coming out of this administration. And truthfully, you'd be foolish not to take it. You guys have to take care of your bottom line. We can't change that here, and I disagree wholeheartedly with the federal policy of what they're doing, because it is truly killing people. And so we won't be able to address that today, but I think Senator Mills has put something on the table that's a good start. I know, and he'll speak personally for himself, that there's some tweaks that I think may address some of the stuff you talked about that he'll be doing probably on the floor of the Senate. And again, not to say too much, I'll let him say that. But I think I have one member that may have had a question. Senator South.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is for the guys at the table, but I have a couple of questions, and they may actually know. So actually, let me, if I could ask them some questions, and then I may have a question for Senator Mills to follow up.
Please go ahead.
You're going to have to help me a little bit on my education here. As we've talked about these plants, I keep hearing, and similar to solar or whatever else, they have a useful life, and at a certain point, we just can't keep going. We have to upgrade, remodel, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. What is the useful life? Is there a term of years we can just say, all roofs normally last 25 years, or at least that's their warranty, or like, what are we talking about?
Right. That's a good question. I would say it depends on the technology and really the decade in which it was implemented. That life, I would say now, is generally averaging in terms of years of service in the mid-50s. It used to be some plants lasted longer. Some of that has been a result of the need for incremental investment because of environmental regulations. Some has just been age and efficiency. I'll just use by way of example, the 3 units that are the subject of our current proceeding before the Kentucky Public Service Commission that we're saying now is the time to retire. 2 of those are due to the investment required to comply with environmental regulations to be able to actually run those units. The other is actually an economic decision. It's an older plant. It's our oldest plant, And it's currently, because of economics, it's only running about 25 to 30% of the time. And it's largely driven by fuel cost. Unlike a lot of our other coal-fired generating units, it's not sitting on a river, so barge access to coal is not an option. And again, it's older, so now it requires a lot more investment of core components, right? And so that, when you have to make that big investment, that's when it's time to sort of reassess, does it make sense to make that big investment and continue operating this unit?
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please go ahead.
So if you were to do a retirement, let's say it's a needed retirement. Let's say everything's broken and you can't even run it 1% at a time. You need to do this retirement. So did you already compensate for that reliability or that energy usage at some other point? So much so that there's no chance that you would need that 1% that it was running? Or like before you shut down that last 1%, have you already added 10% somewhere else? I'm trying to get to the idea of, if you do a retirement, is there any chance at any point in time that you would have a minutia setback on total energy output and reliability, resilience, all this stuff?
There are a number of factors that are looked at to assess reliability. One of them that I think very directly addresses your comment and question is reserve margin. So we will typically ensure that we have enough usable capacity to meet our customers' energy demand at a peak point in time with margins to spare. So relative to sort of a peak load for us, we may carry generation that provides an incremental 25% above that in the event we have mechanical issues at a given plant or unit, or have other uncertainties and issues that crop up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have one question for Senator Mills if and when he comes back.
Yes, and at this time I want to invite Senator Mills to go ahead and come back to the table. He can just come there and join you if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Does that gentleman have
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Please go ahead.
Thank you. First, I would like to state that Duke Energy Kentucky understands the concern that Senate Bill 4 is attempting to address. Reliability is a core mission of Duke Energy Kentucky, and we work hard every day to provide safe, affordable, and reliable energy to our customers. In that regard, our goals are aligned. We are concerned that Senate Bill 4 is a significant shift in the Commonwealth's energy policy that, as my colleague said, will cause customers' rates to increase by requiring them to continue to support and pay for generation well past its useful life. The decision whether or not to retire a power plant is not taken lightly by any prudent operator. The retirement may be necessary because the plant, due to age, can no longer compete in the market with more efficient or lower cost resources, or it simply cannot be upgraded or cost effectively upgraded to comply with environmental regulations. Additionally, rising maintenance costs and availability of replacement components and increased capital investments necessary to continue operation due to the age of the plant can significantly impact whether the generating unit can or should continue operating. Requiring a utility to seek approval from a regulatory body before making this complex operational decision is not legislation that should be passed without stakeholder engagement and thought about the consequences, both intended and unintended. Moreover, such legislation should not establish insurmountable thresholds that make the decision to retire an asset unachievable. Such a result is not in Kentucky's best interests. Senate Bill 4 establishes a rebuttable presumption against the closure of any fossil-fueled power plant. On its face, requiring the utility to prove that the closing of the plant will not jeopardize reliability is logical. The approach, though, that Senate Bill 4 takes creates several thresholds that the generation owner must meet before it can achieve this approval. One of those thresholds is unattainable as currently drafted. The requirement that the RTO or ISO must affirm that a generating unit will not increase the risk of forced curtailments to retail customers during periods of peak demand creates an impossible hurdle to overcome. The Regional Transmission Organization, or RTO, determines and manages reliability for its footprint at the wholesale bulk electric transmission system level. In fact, one of the RTO's jobs is to ensure continued reliability of the high voltage electric transmission system when generation is retired. For Duke Energy Kentucky, we are members of an RTO called PJM Interconnection. The deactivation process in PJM is governed by FERC-approved tariffs. Those tariffs set forth the obligation of PJM as the transmission provider, of the generation owners, and the individual owners and operators of the transmission system. As a generation owner in PJM, Duke Energy Kentucky is required to follow PJM's generation deactivation process when it decides to deactivate or retire a plant. Under this process, when PJM receives a request for a specific generating unit to shut down, PJM does perform a study of the impacts of its transmission system that it manages and goes through a rigorous reliability analysis that looks ahead 15 years into the future and uses standard criteria to identify potential transmission issues or violations of standards. And in the event PJM identifies such a violation or an issue, PJM also identifies solutions and may order transmission upgrades or additions to be built to ensure the safety and reliability of that transmission system. The bulk transmission system is the key term because PJM manages the system at the wholesale level, not retail. Senate Bill 4 blurs this critical distinction by requiring the RTO, in our case PJM, to affirmatively state the retirement will not increase the risk of a retail curtailment. PJM's reliability impact study does not examine impacts of a proposed retirement at any retail level. The legislation as currently crafted would require the RTO's affirmation of a reliability performance to a level that it has no authority, obligation, or capability to make. This requirement places Kentucky's utilities that are in an RTO in the untenable position where a retirement decision, no matter how justified as part of a least cost, most reliable, and efficient resource plan, could never pass muster. If this bill passes, we would not be able to close a fossil fuel plant. That isn't hyperbole. The bill would force our Northern Kentucky customers to continue to pay into perpetuity the operation, maintenance costs, as well as incremental capital investments that we may have to make for a plant that is no longer burning any fossil fuels and not producing any energy. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any questions up here. Senator Mills, you want to come back to the table?
Senator Smith, while Senator Mills is coming back to the table, can I make one clarifying point? It may be a distinction without a difference, but it references back to your reference to incentives.
Yes.
I think you're referring largely to tax credits for renewable
Or even,
generation.
listen, the bottom line is even fighting them in court and emissions. We
Right,
know that
right,
there's so
right.
many different ways for them to come at you, but that all
Right.
comes down to the bottom line that gets factored or slid over into that column that if you're going to use this fuel source, these are all the tricks that come with this dog. And it adds it up, and it causes you all to make a decision not based upon the fuel itself or availability or affordability or you're now basing that upon the fact that if we do this, we're going to have to spend so much budgeted millions in emissions court, being in court almost every day. You're going to have to spend you won't be able to participate in the buffet of benefits that they're putting out there for you. And it's set up in a way to dictate what that board decides on what's to do. So it's not fair. And even still, in lieu of all that silliness, you can go to Henry Hub and see a lot of times coal still posted down there among the very bottoms. And that's a business decision we know you all would like to make, to be able to have that without all the ticks that come with it. And so I don't know that we can solve that today, but we're in a position to where on the other side of this, outside of the business model, we have a group of citizens that just had to go a long extended period of time without having heat, with having children in the house, and there was a snap, and as we walked it back, we're seeing some of the stuff that happened. And so both of us are looking at this, I think, from a different lens. You all have got a board that you have to respond to, and we've got the citizens of the Commonwealth of Kentucky that hold us accountable. And so I do think there's a way for us to do it, but I don't want you to think for a second that we don't, as a committee, understand the hoops and the stuff that the federal policy puts on you that makes you make some of these decisions. And I wish I had the power here today to do away with that nonsense, because it would literally let the chips fall where they may, and you could use the most affordable and reliable source, which I'm sure you'd be happy, and simplify a lot of your litigation. But that's not going to be achievable. But I'll turn it over to Senator Mills, and he's trying.
No.
That's what's important, is that he's not an enemy of the utility, certainly.
No,
We are
I
trying
don't
to, yeah.
believe so at all, no.
So just so we're all on the same page, but I've talked enough, I'll turn it over to Senator
And,
Mills.
and my nit was, was simply that those tax credits go to the customer, not to us. That's all I was trying to clarify.
Well,
So-
some. Now, there's some others, some pretty good incentives that'll come in there that'll waive penalties, I guess, with it. And it's just policy. I mean, it's all dictated to kind of make you all have to look and see what the cost is really going to be, and that makes it tough.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer Senator Southworth's question if she has a question, and then just make a closing
Yes,
statement.
please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes. My question is, if we, I mean, because we are in this situation with the federal policy and the subsidies and all that. I mean, it's how we got into this situation in the first place. So if we say in this bill, well, we're not going to let them shut it down, and of course, coal is going to end up costing more for whatever reason because it's all being subsidized on the other side of not using it. Do we have any kind of value in being able, I mean, because we're the state government and the federal policy is driving all these subsidies. So I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of, is this going to do what I really think it or hope it's doing? Or is the federal policy going to kind of trump everything and they're going to sit there with coal-fired plants not doing anything and going on to this unreliable stuff anyway? Meanwhile, our retired, or not quite retired, but semi-retired plants are sitting there not doing any energy generation.
I think there is a lane of regulation from the state government that I think that's what Senate Bill 4 is about, is trying to put forth what we would like to see, and we would like to have more reliable power. We believe that coal, since it comes from Kentucky, it's on the ground, it's more reliable. If there was long-term contracts, if there was some kind of future that the utilities could look at, I think you'd see coal prices coming down, being a lot more economical like they were in the past. My concern with Senate Bill 4 is really reliability. Cost is important, very important. We see costs in the East particularly rising for several different factors, but my concern is just reliability and making sure that the business decisions that are being made in the boardrooms and the availability of federal incentives that Chairman Smith has talked about doesn't drive us into an environment where we have our constituents hit and miss on electricity. And that's simply what the bill is about. It's pretty tough to be a legislator and to enter a subject like this that for years has been controlled by, experts in the field. And the experts in the field are somewhat even stumped by where the federal government is going. And so we're in a tough limbo situation. But my bill, Senate Bill 4, is about reliability and how I believe that there ought to be someone looking at plant closures. And to be quite honest with you, I think there's still life in some of these coal plants. I finally, in one of our meetings, got one of the utilities to actually tell me what a cost of retrofitting a coal burning facility was. I've asked that question for 2 years and really haven't been able to get an answer. So there are numbers, there are costs involved in continuing to burn coal that they have figured. And I think that we need to try to make sure that coal plants are going to they're maxed out, their life is maxed out, and they continue to burn coal as long as we can. I think that gets us through this I think there's 10 or 12 years coming, maybe even 15 years, where we've got this reliability gap that we're not going to be sure whether we're going to have power or not. And, I think a lot of that has to do with how renewables end up getting stored, how quickly we can build pipelines for gas to get gas to some of these. And coal is the best solution, in my opinion. The coal-fired plants are the best solution to keep them burning in Kentucky over the next several years. So,
Can I have a follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Southworth.
On page 2 of the bill, they were talking about the ISO and RTO in
Yeah.
paragraph 2B. Yeah, that
Yeah.
2B. If 2B didn't exist in this bill, would that affect the outcomes and values of the rest of the bill?
I think that our thought with adding 2B was that was just another set of eyes that could look at the situation, the closure request. In the last couple of days, I've learned that, and the gentleman here in his testimony said that basically they don't look at that until they get the for sure shutdown request as far as reliability standpoints. So that possibly could be an amendment that we could work on, that since that is seems to be unrelated to what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the bill. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, just good housekeeping. We're making a motion on the committee subs. That's correct. Motion and a second on the bill as amended by the committee sub.
Yes.
Got it right. So just for you all, it's a motion on the committee sub as the bill is amended by the committee sub. Motion second at this time. Do you have any other further comments, or you want to vote this?
I do not. I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Carpenter,
Explain my vote.
Yes, please do.
This is always an issue that's of concern, and we have friends on the power side. We have friends, our constituents that's worried about their prices and reliability. So, this process, Senator Mills, as you know, it's a good way to get everybody excited and stirred up and keep them here late on a afternoon. And so it's important issues, and I know that you're going to continue to work with all parties involved, and we just want to keep on moving this train down its tracks. So I appreciate you, and I vote aye.
Senator Mills,
Aye.
Senator Schickel, Senator Southworth,
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Please explain your vote.
I'm going to vote yes. I really think most of my questions have gotten answered. I think I would be more comfortable at this moment by getting an amendment striking 2B. I don't think I have any more questions after that. And, we rub shoulders with people from other states who do the same job we do. And what I found, at least in theory, and I don't know if it's in practice, but it seems like it is, in other states, they actually call their committee subs and stuff markups. And the committee sits there and scratches out during the meeting. And I really see that as what the committee is supposed to do. And so I would like, to be able to do that here and have a process to do that. I don't like voting yes on things, asking for amendments to come later, and then it's, we have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. So, but I do think that minus that, maybe we do have this. And I know that cost is an issue, but we also know that there are places like the federal government that just borrow money off our grandkids' backs. And I even have kids, and where I'm already talking about my grandkids, and they are just spending. They will spend oblivion, and there's no shortage of money to them, and so they will price us out and not be able to maintain this reliability that we need. So that's why I'm voting yes.
Senator Turner,
Can I explain my vote, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please explain your vote.
I really appreciate this bill being, because I think it's the first stopgap bill that we've had in a while. And after listening to TVA saying that they're going to tear down some, they had plenty of gas wells, but one switch got screwed up and they had to shut the power down for thousands. And TVA saying, well, the reason we're going to tear those down is because we hadn't any increase in power usage in the last 5 years. And I asked them, they're not old enough, I guess, remember the 77 freeze that shut down half of America. The Ohio River froze over. We get that. And here their weather wasn't even 20 degrees, and they have to shut that down. They have no thing to control if you've got people on life support or whatever. This is a stopgap measure. We know that they're stockholders and utilities, so they're going to get paid one way or the other. There's incentive from this federal incentive to get them to do that, and TVA admitted it, and the retrofitting of these things should have been going on for years. The taxpayers that buy utilities got to pay for them for the years that they're stringed out there, where they're in use or torn down. So this is the best stopgap I've seen, that they have a procedure now that we can get notified through the PSC before they can take these actions to create more pressure and cause these poor people to have electric bills that they can't afford, especially in eastern Kentucky. And we got plenty of coal, and those reason that we don't have to have windmills and things on our houses, that the good old federal government says all these electric cars is going to use electricity, no place to plug them in because there ain't going to be no utility to be able to support them. I mean, thank you, Mr. Mills, and I really appreciate it, and I vote yes on this bill.
Senator Webb,
Explain my vote, please.
Please do.
I think some of the concerns of the bill have already been discussed and hopefully will be addressed after discussions with the sponsor. Grid reliability is probably one of the biggest issues in this country on many levels, and not just from an energy major here, but I think the conversation needs to continue. I'm glad to see you all here today. Appreciate you being here. And I'm going to vote yes in hopes that the conversation continues, and I anticipate a little bit different version of the bill. Thank you.
Senator Westerfield, Senator Wheeler,
Mr. Chairman, explain my vote.
Please do.
I agree with the comments from the senator from Harlan and several others on this committee. I mean, we do need a stopgap measure to prevent the continued undermining of our nation's electrical grid. I mean, we've seen what some of these government policies out of Washington have caused in states like California, where you have rolling blackouts, where you're told not to even charge up your electrical car at certain times of the day, and yet they expect everybody to go to that. Clearly, on a state level, we can't always affect federal policy, but we can sometimes put a little bit of a kink in it. We also have to remember that these federal tax credits driving some of these policies, you know, the ratepayers are paying these taxes too, so they're paying these electric bills one way or another. And sometimes the folks that, they may not realize that. They may think they're getting a cheaper electric bill, but, you know, we're going to have to take care of this debt sometimes. And the more we continue down this path, the more that we are putting not only our nation at risk from a production standpoint, but also mortgaging our children's futures. So I cast an aye vote, and I thank Senator Mills for bringing this bill.
Senator Williams,
So I said, I've talked to both sides. I'm new to this committee. I see this is going to pass. If it was needed a yes vote for it to move forward, I would, because I think these parties would work together. And there is going to have to be work going forward. But I'm going to pass at this point because I think that I am concerned about the investors and the utilities and some of the other features. But I don't want to see things shut down. But this is going to go forward. People are going to talk together. But I will pass at this time, and then in the hopes that everybody will work together as we go through the process.
Chair Smith.
I vote aye. And the motion, sorry? It passes. Passes, yeah. The motion, the second to adopt Senate Bill 4 has been, as amended by the committee sub, passes this committee with the expressions favorable. So congratulations on getting your bill out. I think you'll have some work to kind of do with it in there. But gentlemen, thanks for your testimony this late hour.
Thank you.
With this,